Hello boys, welcome to Revising English, the digital platform created by the Colegio Peñafort's English department with which we can study from home the contents that we learn in class. With this video, we will study Unit 7. In this unit, we are going to see the modal verbs of advice, expectations and conclusions, obligation and prohibition, and combining modal verbs. And we are going to talk about ability in present, past, and about possibility with can and could. Let's talk about the advice. To give advice or to say something is a good or bad idea, we can use should or ought to. For example, you shouldn't leave money in your hotel room. Be better off plus the verb in ing form. You'd be better off using your credit card. And have better, but we only use it to talk about a moment and not for general advice or the past. For instance, you'd better ask before you use his phone. And must, to be insistent but friendly. In this context, we often use it with the adverb really. It's a wonderful film, you really must go and see it. When we are talking about the past, we use should have or ought to have. For instance, you shouldn't have stayed up so late. You are too tired to work. Let's talk about expectations and conclusions. To talk about things we expect to happen, we can use should or ought to. For instance, the package should arrive before the weekend. And to talk about things we expect to happen in the past, we use should have or ought to have. Often the implication is that it did not happen. For instance, my alarm clock should have gone off at 7:30, but it didn't. To talk about logical conclusions we are making, we can use must plus base form, and this structure refers to the present and it can refer to the future. For instance, she goes on very expensive holidays. She must earn a lot. Must be plus ing form. And this structure refers to the present or the future, depending on the context. For instance, Dad isn't home yet. He must be working late. Finally, we use must have plus past participle when we are referring to past actions. For instance, Jane already knew about the party. Somebody must have told her. But we do not use mustn't for a negative conclusion. We use can't. Now, let's pay attention to obligation and prohibition. To talk about rules and obligations, we can use must, mustn't in formal language. For example, spectators must stand behind the white line. And have to or need to in everyday language. For instance, you have to dress smartly for the concert. To say something is not necessary or not obligatory, we can use don't have to, needn't, or don't need to in the present. For instance, you don't have to give the magazine back, keep it. And didn't need to or needn't have when we talk about the past. But we use needn't have for something that happened even though it wasn't necessary. For instance, food was provided. I needn't have brought a packed lunch. Now let's pay attention to combining modal verbs. Sometimes we combine modal verbs when we want to express, for example, a conclusion about an obligation or speculation about an obligation. Here is an example about a conclusion about an obligation. She must have had to run to get here so quickly. Here we have an example about a speculation about an obligation. We may have to show our passports at the airport. To finish with Unit 7, we're going to talk about ability in present and past. To talk about ability in the present, we use can or be able to, and we normally prefer can rather than be able to when we are describing a current activity. For instance, the boat is rocking too much, I can walk straight. When it means know how to, for example, can you juggle? And when we are using a passive form, for instance, the wheels can be removed. To talk about ability in past, we use could, managed to, or were able to. We use could or couldn't to talk about general ability in the past. For example, she could read before she was 4 years old. We can use the negative form couldn't to refer to something we were not able to do on a specific occasion. For instance, I couldn't find a seat on the train. However, when we need to use an affirmative form, we normally use managed to when we refer to a single occasion, and we sometimes use were able to in this context, but we cannot use could. For instance, I was able to get home in time for dinner. But note that there are certain circumstances in which we use could to refer to a single occasion. We use it with verbs connected with the sense or with thought. And if the sense is negative, even though the form is affirmative. Finally, we're going to talk about ability with can and could. We also use can and could to talk about possibility. We use could to speculate and can for general statements. For instance, taxis can be expensive, buses are usually cheaper. And let's get the bus, a taxi could be expensive. Note that we sometimes use can for speculation in question. In conditional sentence, we often use could in place of would be able to. For instance, if you left now, you could catch the last bus home. Here we finish with revising English from Unit 7.